Hold on tight. The most incredible rock and roll adventure ever is here.
Every kid in the 80s freaked out when they found out that there was going to be a Transformers movie.
I was hyped. I was like, just from what you saw, they never looked better.
I remember when the movie came out, being pretty excited about it.
You got the touch! Transformers, the movie.
I remember I started hearing things about the movie from kids at school. And they were saying, yeah, everybody just gets killed and there's cussing all over the place. And I'm like, no, it can't be true. In the trailer, I remember them saying, does Optimus Prime die? I didn't want to believe it.
My first memory of Transformers, the movie, was probably seeing an ad on TV for it. And I saw several because they showed it all the time, especially during the run of the cartoons in the afternoon and whatnot.
I was big into the cartoons, not so much the toys, but I still love the cartoons.
Man, Transformers the cartoon, right up there with G.I. Joe in terms of 1A and 1B, my favorite cartoons in the 80s.
Wow, we're getting a 90-minute, basically, Transformers episode here.
The first time seeing the actual movie was the day it came out. We got into like the 5:30 showing or whatever it was. Everyone laughed when Spike said, "Oh what are we gonna do now?" and stuff like that. Is the only time seeing it with a really big audience. I actually did see it, I want to say 5-6 times in the theater.
I totally missed out on the theater experience of Transformers as a kid. We just didn't go to the theater very often. I saw Gremlins, and that's the only time I can actually remember going to the theater.
Unfortunately, I had to wait till it came out on VHS and we rented it. Wasn't actually able to see it in the movie theater. And I remember we all sat there and we watched it, my brothers and I.
Actually, the first time I ever watched it was a VHS at school. For whatever reason, we watched a lot of movies on Fridays and at school, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. Maybe we just went to a horrible school.
Putting it in, immediately we're introduced to a new character, not a bad thing. In Hot Rod, you got the hoverboard scene going on with Daniel. All that was like, yes, okay. And then the Decepticons attacked.
Just from that first scene of Hot Rod, and Stan Bush's Dare, it pumps you up. It gets you pumped. All of a sudden, there's this huge battle, one of the most epic battles we'd ever seen in the cartoon because this is a much higher budget.
And they're all kicking ass and stuff until they start dying, which was weird for me at the time.
They killed a lot of fan favorites. They murdered off a lot of the original Transformers that we grew up to know and love.
Watching the movie was awesome. Now, it was spoiled for me because kids talk. There were a lot of kids that saw it in the theater, and so I knew what happened. I knew that a lot of the good characters were going to get killed off. It didn't make it any less sad.
It was jarring on some levels.
It was confusing, I think, and stunning to see characters like Wheeljack and Windcharger just laying there, just absolutely decimated.
I think they went a little overboard, especially some of these characters. Like, I was a huge Wheeljack fan. Loved that toy, loved that character. And we just see his dead body on that ship just tossed aside like he was a nobody. He didn't even get a cool death. He just gets shot and then disposed of.
Seeing RC give like the only fleeting moment of any type of remorse in the whole episode, it seems, for some of these other characters, these other Autobots that, that I watched every day after school. I'd rush home to make sure I didn't miss the Transformers on TV. And to see my favorite characters just getting obliterated like they were nothing. I was numb, actually.
The way it was done was kind of strange. It was almost like the writers for the cartoon just decided, you know what, we're done with these characters, we don't need them anymore, let's take these guys out as quickly as we can, as fast as we can, as easy as we can, and that's pretty much what happened.
Man,
It was definitely a lot more violent than the cartoon because, you know, you had characters dying and stuff, and it was just like, whoa, this is just not on the same level. Over time, I grew to like it, but like the first time I saw the movie, it was kind of hard to take in.
It'd be like if I was watching G.I. Joe the movie and they started killing off Duke, Hawk, just Snake Eyes, a bunch of people like that. It was completely jarring.
I didn't like that the movie took place in the 2005 because that's in the future. And what happened between 1985 and 2005? What happened in that 20 years? Everyone just get along? Everyone's still alive that was in the season 2. They're still alive in, well, as far as I know, in the movie, and then all of a sudden they just start dying. So they must have just had a ceasefire for nearly 20 years.
These characters were a phenomenon to a lot of kids, and they were just tossed aside like, meh. Because it really was just a production line, essentially, for toys. Get the old ones out, get the new ones in. But we were attached to these characters.
Other kids were crying in the movie theater. That other kids, you know, got a broken heart the way I did to see these characters just...
Starscream Does Die, gets vaporized, which sucked because he was my favorite Decepticon. And here he goes down the drain.
I don't know why they killed off Starscream. Why would they do that? I mean, obviously because they want to sell the new toys, but people love Starscream. Them killing off Starscream, that was no good.
For me, being such a passionate fan of the show, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking seeing these characters just being tossed aside. And some animosity actually at the newer characters that were introduced, because I was like, who are these guys? And why are they taking center stage? Why is the focal point on these guys that nobody's ever seen before?
I was looking forward to a whole bunch of new characters being brought out in the movie, but you know, they were all from the future and they all look kind of weird in comparison because they transformed into things that I didn't really recognize, like just a spaceship or a future car. You know, it was just weird.
It was really heartbreaking to see these characters not die, but essentially die. They're gone. You're never going to see them again in that form, and then they become these things, these ships that they have really no imagination to them.
And I understand now that they were trying to usher in, you know, new toys, new characters, and whatnot like that. But it's kind of one of these things where if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Hot Rod, I thought, was a great character design, and I thought it was a cool character until he went and screwed up and got Optimus Prime killed.
Out of the way, Hot Rod!
It was a shock. Even though I knew it was going to happen, it was still a shock. Seeing Optimus Prime die? I mean, what's that about?
Once Prime died, I remember being a kid watching this and just being in complete shock and awe and thinking, whoa, wait a minute, like what?
I think it was handled beautifully, honestly, where he's talking to Perceptor and the other new Autobots that are there, and he passes the matrix of leadership and he turns gray, and that was just such a impactful, powerful shot where you see basically the color of him fade away until he turns this just colorless gray, and the music was impeccable.
I mean, that was all kids talked about for a week at school, was Optimus Prime dying. I mean, he's a robot. They can't fix him.
Optimus Prime dying didn't really come as a surprise because they basically said that he does on the commercials. They said something to the effect of, blah, 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 will Optimus Prime die? And that's the narration actually said something to that effect. And so I was kind of expecting it, honestly, or him to go away or something. I was shocked at the way they kind of did that, especially so early in the movie.
I've literally heard people say that they cried when Optimus turned gray. Now, while I didn't, it was still a moment where I remember 30 years later, I'm sitting there going, wow, what just happened? Like, is this for real? Okay, he's going to come back. He has to come back, right? It's Optimus Prime. And he didn't.
I understand wanting to usher in new characters. It's a business. You want to make money. I get it. Like, you could have introduced new characters a little more gradually. You didn't have to just have to take what you've already established, that what people love, flush it down the toilet and start completely new and essentially a reboot. Because that's what it was. It was a reboot. And they rebooted something at the height of its popularity that was a phenomenon and the children were absolutely going crazy over. Why?
Honestly, an incredibly bad mistake on the part of Hasbro to do this.
But one day, an Autobot shall rise from our ranks and use the power of the Matrix.
Now, as much as we dog it on the movie for its flaws, and it does have flaws, it still remains one of my favorite cartoons of all time. It's robots, it's Transformers still, and, you know, I've come to love it a lot more than when I probably first saw it.
The voice acting, too, was impeccable. Robert Stack, Judd Nelson, Orson Welles. Orson Welles plays Unicron, which was a fantastic character in and of itself. So, you know, there was a lot of great things that went on in this movie. You know, I like the Sharkticons and the Quintessons. There were some great new characters introduced.
The introduction of all these new characters that we hadn't seen before was another kind of jarring experience, but in a good way.
In my perfect world, it would have been kind of a combination of all that stuff, plus seeing a lot more of my favorite characters from the TV series. You know, seeing Jazz and Bumblebee and Sea Spray and Cosmos and Power Glide and having those guys have a little bit more role in it. Honestly, I'm kind of glad they didn't show a lot of those guys because they probably would have killed them off too.
Hot Rod, look! There's a hole in the shuttle!
What? You can win if you're dead. Decepticons!
I think one of the stellar points of the movie, honestly, was the soundtrack. You know, you have Stan Bush's You Got the Touch, Dare to Be Stupid. Some really great songs, some really great instrumental music too that I think really lended to giving some weight to this movie.
Oh, it's very much an 80s soundtrack. I mean, The Touch, Stan Bush. Come on, you don't get more 80s than that. I mean, you could probably get more 80s than that, but that's very 80s.
I don't think it's the epitome of the 80s. I mean, it kind of is, but there was a lot of similar stuff around the same time.
I still pop it in and watch it because it's got that 80s vibe, that 80s nostalgia, and that 80s love that it really appeals to me.
You know, the fact that we're sitting here talking about this movie 30 years later says a lot. I think the impact that had on children that were my age at the time, we still remember that fondly, and that's something that I've been able to pass on to my son, and he loves it. He loves Transformers. He loves that movie. That movie still, I think the movie still holds up today in a lot of ways.
It's just crazy. And I got obsessed, honestly, with death after that because, you know, Optimus Prime dies, a lot of other characters die, so I just kind of got obsessed with death, and a lot of the things I started drawing after that, you know, things would be dying more instead of happy like I drew before that.
I was a changed child afterwards. I think I was a little more jaded. If this could happen in a cartoon, you know what I mean? What's real life got in store?
Transformers, the movie. Coming to a theater near you this August.